Back in the 80s and 90s, a lot of kids' cartoon shows featured villains that would come on to the show every week to cause problems, and every week the heroes would defeat them, either because the villains were dumb as rocks, or were super intelligent but extremely overconfident. Ninja Turtles had Shredder and Bebop and Rocksteady. Strawberry Shortcake had Sour Grapes and the Purple Pie Man. Rainbow Bright, Care Bears, My Little Pony, Transformers. Just about anything you could name had a different reoccurring villain that appeared in the episodes, caused problems for the heroes, and those problems were resolved usually because of the bumbling sidekicks or whatever else. Even stories like Batman has a large rogues gallery of different characters. Suppose there are exceptions to this topic, like the real Ghostbusters, which had a different ghost each week, with every episode being something action-packed. Even the 90s had its share of villains of the week. Darkwing Duck had a rather impressive rogues gallery of different villains. Gargoyles had it as well. During the more recent eras, we've seen the idea of a villain of the week kind of storyline sort of fade away into more interesting stuff. While this plot is still done on the Nickelodeon Ninja Turtles series because they're trying to follow what was a hit back in the 80s and 90s, shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra don't have the rogues as much, focusing instead on one major villain that takes the whole season to take down. In the case of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, the major threats to the heroes surface during the season premieres and the season finales, with the in-between stuff being either slice of life things or short little adventures with far lesser threats. You don't have a lot of major crime fighting and world in peril and corny, cheesy, over-the-top super villains with elaborate plans to take over the world and so forth. You have stories on the series that are more focused on things like friendship and relationships and learning important lessons, and that can be interesting. But I was thinking the other day about a 90s era series also created by Lauren Faust, who also created My Little Pony, and that is Powerpuff Girls. And that was a series that used the formula of different villains every week who resurfaced throughout the run of the series and always had various plans to do various evil things, whether it was taking over the world or just causing mischief or whatever. The Powerpuff Girls did have their own rogues gallery. I was wondering what would happen if the creatures that were evil in My Little Pony had more of a Powerpuff Girls treatment as opposed to the treatment that they do get in the Pony series as it is officially. Considering that both things were created by Lauren Faust, it's not that much of a stretch to imagine her having a preference to lean towards a more Powerpuff Girls route with the ponies as opposed to doing the more slice of life thing. And I guess on the other hand, you could look at what would Powerpuff Girls be like if it was more slice of life and less actiony, but that's a topic for another time if I even decide to get to it, unless you guys want a shot at that question. So for this particular topic, I'll look at the first two seasons, since that's when Lauren Faust was in charge, and you would have had a much more likelihood of the series taking the Powerpuff Girl route, as opposed to being what it is now. So we start off with Friendship is Magic Part 1 and Part 2. Here the main villain is Nightmare Moon, the evil persona of Princess Luna. If Nightmare Moon were to come back after this episode as a character who wasn't defeated but was rather repressed, or her plans halted, and Princess Luna was still some good in there, an interesting way to take this character would be to mirror her after the character of Kurt Connors / the Lizard from the Spider-Man series, because Dr. Connors and the Lizard being one and the same, and having this constant struggle between the good and evil, rather like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or Bruce Banner and the Hulk, or however you want to put it. Kurt Connors would always transform into the Lizard against his will, and then he would go on a rampage doing evil stuff as the Lizard. Spider-Man would encounter him, remind him of his human side, and he would struggle to turn back into Dr. Connors, while at the same time struggling to remain the Lizard. Eventually, the human side would win over. Other things that appear in this episode that have not resurfaced to the date of this recording in the My Little Pony series includes the Manticore, the Shadow Bolts, and the Flamboyant Sea Serpent. Flamboyant Sea Serpent wouldn't be a bad guy, but he could be an interesting character to see again in rivers and such. Shadow Bolts would be more or less Nightmare Moon's lackeys, the Bebop and Rocksteady of the series, or the equivalent of the Stormtroopers from Star Wars, the characters who would be disposable and not very good at their job, but would still be a decent threat. The Manticore would be more of a brute force character, like Killer Croc from Batman, or the Rhino from the Marvel Universe. Somebody that would sort of charge in and cause a lot of problems, but could still be dealt with fairly easily. In this alternate interpretation, of course, you have to consider the Manticore as being a cliched 80s villain, not the foreign stuck in Nepal character who was never really evil. Our next villain is Griffin the Brush Off with Dilda, who is actually highly popular in the fandom and could definitely have worked as a reoccurring villain. She has that sort of assassin attitude to her, that whole everybody's against me and I'm just out for myself attitude. But what plots would I do with her, and what does she most remind me of? Suppose someone like Dilda would probably be kind of a ringleader of lesser thugs, pulling off small things like bank robberies and jewelry store robberies and various other break-ins. I don't see her attempting to take over Ponyville or overthrow Equestria or anything of that nature. Kind of like the Scorpion from Spider-Man, or maybe like Sabretooth from the X-Men series. Somebody with the power of flight, sharp claws, beak that can pack, a really bad attitude, but not a whole lot of special powers or talents at her disposal. Next up we have Trixie. And, my original thought was to only cover characters that don't have a very huge fan base. like the Manticore and the upcoming Diamond Dogs. But I think I'm going to go through the list of all of the characters from the first 2 seasons. Trixie is already pretty much what your stereotypical 80s and 90s era cartoon villain would be. Loud and braggy. And when she gets the Alatorn amulet in season 3, she becomes extremely overpowered. The difference is that if this was a back in the day cartoon, Trixie would have the Alatorn amulet to give her that power, and in every defeat of her character, she would lose or break the amulet somehow or another, and then have to get it back by the next episode. The amulet would be hidden, lost, damaged, whatever else, and by her next appearance, she would have to reobtain it and regain her power and resume being evil. Think of Trixie as someone like Sinestro, the villain from the Green Lantern comics. Someone who has extraordinary, unlimited power to do whatever she imagines, but with the limitations of an object that can be put on and taken off. Next is the dragon from Dragonshy, but he doesn't particularly bother me because he did make a reappearance during the dragon migration. The Dragon Quest dragons have a little more interesting personality and make good higher dragoon characters. Like the Dang Green Dang from Powerpuff Girls, they would be out to cause general mischief. But the adult dragons seem to spend most of their time sleeping, so there's really not much to do with them until they get further, deeper character development. Diamond Dogs. This is a very strong candidate for the 80s era cartoon supervillain because they have a lot of that personality in them already. All you have to do is keep them greedy and stupid and have them constantly knocking over jewelry stores, robbing banks, picking pockets, pulling all kinds of scams, pony napping various characters, etc., etc. On to season 2, we have Discord, who you would change absolutely nothing about Discord, except in the end of Return of Harmony, instead of turning Discord to stone, you would trick him and he would disappear. And then he would reappear and disappear again and reappear, disappear over the course of the next bunch of seasons. The further discussion of this topic was to take things a little further. Take Faust's characters and apply them to the formula that was used in Powerpuff Girls, her previous creation, and see how these characters would change if they had remained evil and had appeared on multiple episodes throughout the run of the series. Anyhow, tell me what you think in the comment section below. Thank you for watching, and good night.